We are almost done with the player character sheet, and now we're going to talk about armor class. And equipment. Armor class and equipment, it goes hand in hand. Armor class is nothing more than a number, which indicates how strong you are, how good your character is at warding off an attack. Whether that be avoiding an attack or just having the right armor that attacks don't hit you. At any rate, it's a number that an attack roll will be compared to. And every creature in D&D, your player characters, every monster, has an armor class. And that's the indication of how hard it is to hit. There are some creatures that have lots of hit points and very low armor class. Easy to hit, hard to kill. There are some creatures that have very low hit points, but very high armor class. Hard to hit, easy to kill. There's a whole spectrum of those things. Player characters have armor classes defined by the types of armor that they're wearing in most cases. Barbarians being a little bit of an exclusion to the rule in that they don't wear armor, yet they have really kind of strong armor classes. So let's get into it. I'll tell you where to find it. We'll talk about equipment in general and finish this player sheet out so you guys can get to playing some Dungeons and Dragons with your friends. So when you're filling out your player character sheet, you need to move to the player's handbook here. There's a whole chapter on equipment, chapter 5 right there. And there's tons of information in here, including the details of armor class, as well as a ton of other stuff, all of the items that you might need in your adventuring career. I'm going to jump over into DnDBeyond. It's a little bit easier to maybe navigate, but just know that we're going to be spending some time in the player's handbook. So see you in a second. All right, hello. We're in DnDBeyond, and I've got the player's handbook up here. I just want to point out to you kind of the layout. We're going to be jumping into chapter 5 here on equipment. You can see armor and shields and weapons is all right there. And then also in the classes summary. So let me show you where equipment shows up in the classes summary first. And let's just pick a druid here. Okay. So right out of the gate, let's scroll down on druid, power of nature. And this is going to be in the same place for all of these player character classes. Class features. So we've talked about hit points last week. We talked about proficiency bonus a couple of weeks ago, and then look what's next, equipment. So you can start with the following: a wooden shield or any simple weapon, a scimitar or any simple melee weapon, and then you've got leather armor, an explorer's pack, and a druidic focus. So there you go. So you can start with that. And the leather armor, if you highlight it in DnDBeyond, it'll tell you kind of what it is. But when we get into armor, I'll show you how to determine what the armor class is based on what that armor is. So let's go back. That's going to be in all the classes there. Now if we go into equipment, I just also want to point out something here. You can either start your build by choosing what the kind of the rule books suggest in each of those class descriptions, or conversely, you can start with a bundle of money and go to this chapter and buy your stuff. And there's a table here which kind of tells you by class what your starting wealth is. You would roll dice to determine how much gold that you start with. And then I'll point out, when you start, you either receive your equipment based on a combination of your class and background, or you can start with the gold based on that table I just showed you. Let's pretend like we're just starting, which is kind of the easiest way to start, by receiving your equipment based on your combination of class and background. And let's think about that druid. He said leather armor, right? So let's go all the way down to armor. And here we are. Leather armor class is 11 plus your dexterity modifier. And that's it. There's nothing else to add to that. You take that number and plop it into the player character sheet under armor class. And that's what you start with. Now you can get higher armor classes by changing the type of armor. Perhaps you want you find some studded leather, or maybe you buy some. That gives you an extra armor class point there, 12 plus your dex modifier. Or you can try other types of armor, but you've got to remember that if you are not proficient in armor that gives you more protection, you're going to be at a disadvantage. And literally, you're going to be rolling with disadvantage if you're wearing armor that you're not supposed to wear. And as you can see here on this table as well, a lot of this armor already gives you disadvantage on stealth. So you can be proficient in wearing it, but it ain't going to make it any quieter. So there's some pros and cons there. So that's where armor class comes from. Weapons, let's take a quick look. Let's keep scrolling down to weapons. And this is where, depending on the weapons that you get, you remember in the Druid description, simple melee weapon. So there's a whole list of simple melee weapons there. And this is the damage type. So you can pick one. Say I want to be a Druid with a quarterstaff. Then my damage that I would inflict would be 1d6 plus, for quarterstaff, it would be probably a strength modifier that you would add to that. 1d6 plus, your strength modifier. Some of these are going to be lighter finesse weapons. So if it's finesse, you would add your dexterity modifier as your additional damage amount. So, cool, huh? Lots of stuff here. Look at all this adventuring gear. I mean, the list just goes on and on and on. So if you were going to go shopping, or say you make it into a town, and a small town's got a trading post, you've discovered some treasure, kind of feeling like you want a mirror maybe, some holy water, you can use this table, or your dungeon master can use this table, and determine, well, okay, do you want some rope? You have 10 gold pieces for silk rope. You can buy some. There's a lot that you can do with this equipment. But really what we're talking about here is building the player character sheet. So the most important thing I want you to get out of this is going back up to the armor, this table here, which shows you, depending on the armor that you've got, what your armor class is. Notice here, a shield always is +2. Yeah, so a shield gives you +2, but remember, you gotta have one hand on the shield. Here's my, oh, you can't see it, there it is, my frying pan lid shield. Huh? +2, just like that, boom. All right, I think that's it on armor class. Next week, let me do this. All right, so next week's video is going to be a demonstration. I'm going to figure out how to put the camera in such a way that you can actually watch me go from start to finish, filling out a player character sheet using the old-fashioned pencil and paper. And then the following week, I'm going to fill out a player character sheet on DnDBeyond so that you can see kind of the juxtaposition of the digital and the old Luddite way of doing things. And in DnDBeyond, you can actually print your player character sheet, so it's not that futuristic. If you want to just bring a paper sheet to your game, you can do that as well out of DnDBeyond. It's actually a really cool tool, and to be honest, it makes you make sure you don't miss things, really, because the intelligence built into the software kind of reminds you of what to add where, and so it takes care of a lot of that for you. But I'm a big fan of learning calculus using paper and pencil with no calculator, and so that's kind of why I'm building a player character sheet by doing paper and pencil, no calculator. So you'll know it. You'll have a better sense of what goes where and when. This playlist is almost complete. So have fun playing Dungeons & Dragons with your new player character. See you next time.